What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracey, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? We have a treat for you. I've been pumped up and geared up for this conversation since sitting with Shane in my office a few weeks ago. We had a cancellation from Amy Morin, who was supposed to come all the way from Arizona, and I was sitting and talking with Shane, like, man, just lit up talking about mindset, grasping his energy. You'll understand what I'm talking about here in a minute when we bring Shane on set, and I'm excited for you to grasp some of this. But as we're sitting and talking, I'm like, man, I'm booked out until December. I want to have you on right now. And it just so happened he was like, well, let me know if any cancellations popped up. And it reminded me that Amy had just canceled out. She wasn't able to make it back from Arizona in time. And so anyways, here we are. Everything happens for a reason. So pumped up to dive into this conversation. Like I said, I'm amped up just what we've been talking about, some of the stuff here, and I'm really excited. There's a story that Kevin just shared with me to really dive into this guy's mind. So without any further ado, and I met Shane. 'Cause I always like detailing where I meet people. When you meet really awesome people, guess what? They surround themselves with really awesome people. That steel sharpens steel. And so Kevin Brown, who's been a friend of the show, he's been on 3 times. He's been kicking me people that are just amazing. Shane being one of them. So here we go, man. Shane, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So I didn't say, Shane, you're a serial entrepreneur. I know we're going to talk a lot about Storm Taekwondo and mental toughness and mindset, but it's awesome. I can tell you're a serial entrepreneur and you're a completely driven person because you're like on the way here, you're like, I'm at the coffee shop. There's only one in town. I should open up a coffee shop. And then you're like, hey, I can engrave those. Like, I love it, man. This is what it's all about, is that entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I mean, I think my focus has always been processes. So we have about 6 companies that we work with, and I don't do all the work in them. You can't. But I like figuring out the sales process, and I like trying to put processes in place so it can be done by other people. They say it's only a business if you're not the one doing all the work. If you're doing all the work, it's a job you can't quit that you make like $3 an hour doing. And I learned that early. So I enjoy doing that, and I fail a lot doing it. I fail every single day, but it's exciting.
Yeah. And I think that's the message for the entrepreneurs. And I put this show out for a lot of different people, but there's when I was going out and I was having conversations, I started my business and I wanted to learn from people that were doing great shit, like they were kicking ass, and I wanted to learn from them or just pick their brain. And so I was out having these conversations, and it dawned into me, like, there are not many people that when they start a business, they go out and open themselves up to have conversations and to learn from the great people. And like I said, steel sharpens steel.
Oh yeah.
So to be able to put yourself in those situations. So I just brought the situations to them. I have people like yourself on this podcast so people can learn from you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy sharing the lessons I've learned, especially if you've learned hard lessons. If someone's willing to learn, I think it's great to share it and help some of the younger people. I kind of think the current generation is a mess. These young people that are trying to work. When I talk to all these parents, for instance, coming to Storm Taekwondo with their children, that they really want to be successful, because only good parents bring them into these programs and give them the extra academics or what they need. The one thing I tell them is, I really do believe the number one thing wrong with everything is a lack of good parenting right now, and I think it's coming back actually because they've seen what had happened. But I just think that we need to guide these guys, and it doesn't mean we have to be gentle. I think we have to be honest.
I was just thinking about this the other day, because it's what happens. Like, every generation impacts the future. So you look at like my grandparents, they grew up in the Great Depression, and they had a certain mindset around things. You don't waste food. You eat everything that's on your plate. Like, you don't complain about what food it is. And so that next generation of people are like, oh, I'm not going to do that to my kids. Like,
right.
Oh, go ahead. Like, you can waste that. Like, oh, I'll make you a special meal, and things just adapt. And like, as that goes on, every generation of kids are like, oh, I'm not going to make my kids do that. And it just gets weaker and weaker.
100%. I mean, my wife's family was exactly like that, especially with the meat. My background is interesting. My mom is from a Polish background, blonde hair, blue eyes, no family. No, I have no aunts, uncles, nothing. Her mom was a schizophrenic, didn't really get to see her. Dad died young. My dad, my oldest aunt, just to give you how close, with her mother, with my grandmother, came over on the boat from Iraq, where I'm Chaldean. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. I'm bright white, so everybody looks at me as the bald, white, conservative guy, and I am conservative, right? But I had that all my family values and the types of things that I learned as a kid came from my father's side of the family, and they're kind of brutal, I mean, it's about accountability and just no bullshit, right? People always use, ever since the BLM thing, people want to use the term brown people, right? And it's funny, I had my whole family. I grew up with accents, so I understand that culture. So when I have any of these Middle Eastern, Indian, all these great parents that are like first or second generation coming into Storm, I know what they want for their children. They don't want what the 6, 7, 8, 9 generations that more often, not all, but more often create here in the States right now, the kind of, culture. They want to have that accountability and a little bit of grit, and they want the kids to have responsibility. So it's very easy to filter out which parent is going to stay or going to go. And it's really easy. When the parents come in there and the kid's been out there for 10 minutes, they're like, oh, my poor baby, he's tired, he needs some water. I'm like, yeah, you need to go. Yeah. This is not for you. And I'm criticized. Almost everybody that has a marketing system for martial arts, they'll do anything they can to keep them. It's all about money. It's all about easy. Don't let them fight. We don't kick to the head. It's a head-kicking sport. Literally, the highest value score is kicking at that. Now, we do it safely, and the way it's set up, it can be done very safely. But I just tell them, like, from day one, this is not a helicopter parent program. This is a parent program where they're going to get worked out. We handle discipline on the mat. The kids go out. They don't come to mom and dad. They go to the corner and say, listen, other kids are having fun. You're not. Okay, you want to go have fun? Yeah. Okay, here's what we have to do. And then when they're older, there's other things. They actually do push-ups. They get really good at them, you know? So we don't let them off the mat. I tell the parents, if they start running off the mat when they want to, they can't be here. We cannot have kids running on and off the mat. But what you do is you have a huge group of drama-free parents that all agree what they want for their children. There's no bickering. There's no drama. They're all, somebody walks in, they're literally selling them on our school while their kid's doing their first class. But nobody has the vision to do that. They feel like they have to grasp onto every single customer that comes in the door. And I'm highly criticized for it. But I'm like, no. I'm building my customer base.
That's exactly it. And we talk about that a lot on this show is discerning, separating yourself from the people that will take anybody just to stay in business or stay afloat or stay or survive. Or you could have somebody doing well, but they'll take anybody and they'll try to make it work for everybody. The most successful businesses, I think the happiest entrepreneurs are the ones that create businesses that serve the people that they specifically want to serve.
Right. And we did in that process, the average club hovers about 80 students. And that's just enough to pay the bills. There's no really making money at that point for a lot of people that are only doing that. I'm lucky because this is my fun business. I don't really care about the finances for it. But we put 125 people in there in under a year. And my goal is to put another 100 in there this year. Okay? And again, this is not getting parents that give them whatever they want. This is being very clear what the program is like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you create that clarity, you don't have any misconceptions.
No.
You get the parents buy-in, obviously. How does it work with the kids once they're in the program?
Well, I warned the parents, like, listen, if they haven't worked out, especially the 6 and up, the little guys, it's all about getting them ready for school, being used to what a teacher, not crying. Because, they cry on the mat. We're like, listen, if you keep bringing them, they'll stop crying. So it's the first test is, can the parent leave the kid and let them figure it out, right? Because if not, they have to do it at school, and there's less tools at school where they can't stand around in there, right? So, I tell them in the 3 to 5-year-old class, it's about preparing them for school, and we have serious time, we have fun time, serious time, fun time, okay? And if they want to have fun time, they got to take the serious time. So that works, and we have no problem bumping up the 6-year-old class if they're emotionally able, right? So we don't do it strictly by age. We do it. We kind of have them earn their way. Some kids want to go to the big class. Some want to fight because that's when you get to spar. Yeah. They want to, especially, boys and girls. I mean, they want to kick people. It's fun and it's safe the way we do it, especially when you're little. You're not going to hurt anybody. Yep. In the bigger class, my son's legs hurts. Well, yeah, he's never used his body, so you need to bring him. In fact, I can tell right away when they say, well, I want to see if my 7-year-old will like this. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, what if he's quit everything else? And so I tell him on the phone, I don't even have him come in. I say, well, if you're going to let a 7-year-old determine if he's going to do the sport or not, you're not going to make any progress. I said, you're the consumer. You come and see if you like it. You see if it's good for your child, and you make the decision, because he's not old enough to make the decision. And if he moans and bitches to come in, that's fine. Once he's there, if he's having a good time and you see improvement, then you make the decision.
And it makes me think, like, throughout all of life, the greatest things are outside of that comfort zone. Mm-hmm. The things that have turned out the best for me were uncomfortable at the start. So you come for a first time and you don't like it, you could be missing out on the greatest thing of your life.
100%. I don't care what you do. I mean, I did jujitsu. I trained some jujitsu with a very, very great scorpion fighting system, James Gray, right? Their stuff is no joke. I'm 40 years old, rolling with 20-year-old ripped gladiators, the pro fighters, and it's really difficult to be smothered. I mean, in wrestling and jiu-jitsu, you're either dominating somebody or not. There's no break, right? Yeah. But you can get to love that, and I loved it. I mean, they kicked my ass every single day, and I really felt like I was getting better. And I know I wasn't necessarily tapping any of these dudes out, but I thought personally it was a great thing. So I think people need to find something they're good at. Another point to what you said is, the big problem now with social media and all this garbage is, if you're not good at something, or you're not in a place where people respect you, whether it be, when you're older, it's work and things like that. But when you're a kid, what is it? So say you're in Taekwondo. You're good, your friends like you have a place you like to go. So when somebody at school says you're this and you're that, and they say degrading things, whatever, I have a safe place. Yeah. But if you never find something you're good at, right, and you're encouraged, then everything that comes to you, you're considering to be true.
It sticks to you.
And I think that is one of the greatest assets of any sport. I could probably teach mental toughness in chess. It's really not about it. Just Taekwondo is my vehicle because I love it.
Yep. I had a guest on, it was probably about 2 years ago now, Dean Ditto, and he coaches football, and it was the same thing.
Tough sport.
The episode was like tricking kids into mental toughness or something like that. We talked about, how do you build grit? How do you build grit without the experience?
Right.
You really can't.
No. And I will tell you, there's some serious markers that I can use as how successful I can be, right? So if I get someone around 6 or 7 years old, before puberty, right?
Yep.
They're less aware of that negativity. They're less likely to be worried about, other than their mom and dad attachment. Once you get out of that, they don't really care when they're out competing and doing things about, well, if somebody what if I lose? It doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
And then as you hit puberty, especially in women, they're very high level thinkers, right? So they're thinking and reflecting, and then they're worried about what people think. So that's why you have very few teenage girls that will start Taekwondo, put on a goofy uniform and a white belt, and look ridiculous for a couple months until they get good, right? They have to already have confidence from their parents, which a lot of this does depend on the parents, And then boys are a little different. I don't care how good they are. I always tell the parents when they start to really think that their kids are doing well, and they're doing well in any sport, okay? So don't worry, at 9 or 10, they're going to want to quit. No, they won't. He's a high-level soccer. He'll never quit soccer. He's going to want to quit. He's going to want to quit everything, no matter how much they're winning, to go play video games, because that's what is easy, right? Boys are like, think about the arguments with your wife. Wife wants to talk about everything. You're like, I'm good. We're no more talking, right? We just want to get away, right? So it's just a biological difference. It's not right or wrong, right? Yeah. So boys are like, why bother? I'm just going to fail, or it's too hard. I'll just walk away. And so with boys, you really need to make sure you don't let them out, because they get over it. And when they get in the habit of then finally liking that, right? Women are tend to be more, they're more social. They want to please their parents, and they want to please the coach. So as long as if they trust. See, the thing with women, though, is they have to trust a lot more. Boys kind of do what they do, right? But, if you give the trust of a young lady, then they will go through fire for you. They want to go. So it's really interesting how to coach both. But if you understand these markers, so I get them afterwards, they've already got fears and things, a lot from their parents. They don't mean to. Yep. I do truly believe, and I'm not saying that they're bad parents, but we imply or we project our own feelings, right?
And feelings, yeah.
So if I can get them early, I can really, really, really map out a strong mental toughness if I get them before they hit puberty, right? Now, I've got people right now even that are full-grown men that there's no time left, and I only got them late, right? So it's a much tougher path. It's a much tougher conversation. It almost seems brutal. And my thing with everybody is, if you tell me you want to fight, I will do everything in my power to push you and do that. You want to tap out. If you say I want to go do a different sport, I don't want this. I don't want your help. It's all gone. So even with this, a couple of the adults that I'm helping right now, who has way more than Taekwondo. It has to do with life, and and I'm having calls every day. Did you do what you're supposed to? Did you do the hard things? Did you And I tell them once a month, if this is too much pressure for you, if you don't like what I'm helping you with, just say you don't want it. You're an adult. But they tend to, if they feel like it's working. So but it's much harder, I believe. Not that it can't be done.
Yeah.
Right. But it's very difficult. And so there's different ways to determine how well it's going to work.
I love that breakdown, and I can see the excitement from the kids' standpoint, because they don't have, again, all the baggage and the things, the projection from your parents. At 6, 7, that's that's the time where it's really sinking in.
Right. I'll tell you, autism, one of the greatest gifts you can have as a kid. But here's the challenge.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of parent training.
Yep.
It's just like when you train dogs. You're really training the owner. The dog's fine, right? It's the owner. So I have this lady that has 3 children, and they're great kids. But the oldest one is autistic, functioning autistic. So when you have your first child, it's not really her fault, but when the first child's autistic, you do all this study like a good mom does. Everything's about autism. It's autism. No, kids get bullied even if they're not autistic. No, kids are little assholes sometimes, not because they're autistic.
Yeah.
No, kids will manipulate you. Even better, because autism is actually a high-level thinking. It's a superpower, right?
Yeah.
So she came in and was really engaged with everything and really over the top. She had some martial arts experience, so she knew it all. It was like kung fu or something like that. I don't really know a lot about it, but I was like, yeah, she's not going to last, So I did what I normally do with all the kids, and this kid probably cried for 90 days. And he took him right to team. I brought him in the team so I could work with him, because I was only running team at this other school. As when I sold my school for a while, I still took care of my high-level athletes, found a place I could train them. The deal was train these other 15 people for free. You can have the space. Great. We had one of the greatest teams in the Midwest. Didn't even have my name on it, but it was great. I had fun doing it, and the few Storm kids that I already had really got to a high level while we were doing it, right? So anyways, kid's crying. He's not crying because he's hurt. He's crying because that's his expression when he's under stress, right? Mm-hmm. So he's doing great. She's definitely having some more confidence, but she's starting to tell me about school. Well, he's standing here on the merry-go-round, and he's in the spot he's supposed to be, and this girl is sticking her leg out. Every time she goes by, she kicks him. But he's autistic, so he doesn't know to move. I'm like, well, let me get that. If I got sick of it, I'm like, let me get this straight. He can avoid getting kicked in the face in my class, but he doesn't have the intelligence to step back one step. No, he's being a little ass. That's what he's doing. And she's getting calls every day. Well, she's calling every day. What happened, right? What happened to my kid? What's going on? And so she goes, the parents hate him. So I finally had enough. I stared down. I said, no, they don't hate him. They hate you. Really? Yeah. Like, who's going to go ahead and try to work with this kid when every day you call and you've got a complaint about how he's being handled at school? All right. Well, he's being picked on. Great. I said, come here. I said, here's what you do. Someone pick on you? He goes, yeah, sometimes. I said, you got 2 options. Punch him in the face or get away. And she's like, and I'm like, that's it. Those are your options. I said, number 2. I said, I print shirts. I have a print shop.
Yeah.
So I said, you can draw on paper any shirt you want. You go 1 week without a negative note, I'll give you a shirt any way you want. Really? Yep. Only one time, a couple days, did he get a note. Went a whole week. Second shot. Boom. Right? So, okay, now, I said, if you go a month without a note, I will print you a uniform. They're like $100, right?
Yeah.
Like a really nice uniform. Any way you want. But you got to go a month. Boom. Hits it. And I said, but I said, hey, but after this, you get nothing. Well, why? Because we know you can control yourself. I said, so we're not doing this forever. I'm basically proving to your mother, not you.
Yeah.
I already know you can do it.
Yeah.
Okay. This kid is brilliant. He is. He's like a blue belt. He's beating black belts. They even realize he shouldn't be. Like the kid is amazing. One of the fastest athletes. One thing is with his autism, he sometimes pauses and thinks and gets caught when he's unconfident. But that's went from 50% to like maybe 10, 15%. So he'll grow out of that, So now she tells me he's getting good notes home. He's a leader. He gets put in a positive class. Like unbelievable things have happened, right? So she goes, and this won't be popular, so I'm sure you'll get a lot of negative things on this. So she goes, well, at home, when I'm trying to get ready, sometimes he flames out and he won't do it. And I'm like, well, make him. What do you mean? Well, he self-harms. No, he doesn't. Yeah, he does. He'll hit his head on the wall. No, he doesn't. He's not hurting himself. What do I do? I said, next time he hits his head on the wall, I said, slap the shit out of him. She said, what do you mean? I said, trust me, tell me. I said, you want to hurt yourself? I'll hurt you myself. Well, let's show you what it actually feels like. I go, you only have to do it once. I promise. I said, slap it. I'm going to hurt him, but, make it uncomfortable, right? And she's like, oh, it worked. Like the kid's not doing it anymore, right? He's not. It's so predictable. But again, if you don't know, like I'm 51 years old, I've got 3 kids growing up. I've been through it all. So some of it's just education. And again, if that's your first child, if you have a first experience with a product, it doesn't work out, and it's just bad luck, But it's not bad luck in her case. It just didn't know. And then you've got all these woke therapists that just go down a script. Nobody actually does their job. I'm sorry. 1 out of 100 therapists are good. 1 out of 100 doctors do their job. 1 out of 100 coaches do their job. And I'm just rambling at this point, but that's just kind of my vision.
I have a client on the autism spectrum. Shout out to Casey, and he's just brilliant. He's got these superpowers, right? And like you have people that are afraid to make calls to people. I have to watch saying like, oh, make sure to call this person, because all of a sudden he's on the phone. Like he's like dialing it up. I'm like, whoa. And they'll be like, what are we going to talk about? Like as he's on the phone, I'm like,
it's awesome. I'll take every autistic kid on the planet. Bring them.
Yeah. But like his whole life, just, parents don't know any better. It's first kid that, and like they tell him all of his limitations. And so he's bugged with all these limitations, or he thinks people pick on him because he's autistic. Right. People would pick on you whether you had autism or not.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I got picked on. I didn't have, like
take away cord, they'll make fun of your eyes. Take away cord, they'll make fun of your ears. It doesn't matter. We're gonna whoever you're not in the room with, whoever's not like you or not used to, you're gonna find out the way they talk. Humans are humans. And we don't even hate them. It's just even with your friends, whoever's not in the room is being made fun of.
Yep.
Let's stop being so thin-skinned.
Especially for kids, because all the other kids are going through the period. And I hated this when I got picked on as a kid, and people would tell you like, oh, they're just going through their own things. They don't like themselves. It's true. It's true. 5,000% true, and you could see that so calmly as a kid. Like, I think it would change the perspective.
Yeah, I would get a call from a coach every now and then. Guy, he and I actually work very closely right now, but he goes, I don't know if you heard what happened. He says, what? I got this gal, actually one of the highest performing girls on my team right now, but she was like 7 or something, and she was at a cross training. She was very tall at the time. Now she's normalized her height, but she was bigger than all the other kids her age. So when they were sparring and grouping up, they're like, you're not 7. She looked like she was 12, right? and they're like, no, I'm really 7. And all this happened, and the parent kind of, and he calls me up. He goes, I don't know if you heard all of this stuff. I'm like, no, but I don't care. It is what it is. I'm not too worried about it. Things happen, whatever. But people are so sensitive. Or another thing, like, I know that you overheard that, I was, somebody said that my kid, should kick your kid's ass or do that. And I'm like, well, what are you supposed to tell them? Supposed to tell them they're going to go out and get beat up when you're their coach and trying to, like why are we upset about, having a conversation? We're not saying anything bad, but yeah, of course, get them in the mindset that they should be out there and be competitive. So it's even in a coaching realm where you would think that would be common sense. It's like, yeah, don't be so sensitive. We're talking to our children in a way, or our athletes in a way that we want to encourage them,
Absolutely. I think about that. Like, again, I think parents I know parents, they want to protect their kids, right? And so they say things, they don't realize how people internalize them.
Right.
Like, oh, you're autistic, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do this over here, you'll never be able to do this, you'll probably be awkward, not ever. Yeah. Those are beliefs that stick to you.
Especially from a parent. What other role model is most important? Same-sex parent. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. My daughter, Megan, my youngest, who is massively dyslexic. Like, I'm not going to go over explain how massive, but so she had to relearn how to read because has such an eidetic memory. She was memorizing books. It looked like she could read, and we figured out she literally couldn't. But she was brilliant, right? So and she was in a private school at the time, so she's less likely to. And the parents or the teachers have better control over the type of feedback she gets, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
And so we're just like, yeah, your brain's different. And just like you got to work hard in Taekwondo, and she was a savage athlete. And in fact, dyslexia helps with perception. It's almost like you can see from a third direction, the match and distance and stuff, which is great for her. But because she was small, but she was really good. But I just said, it's like Taekwondo. Sometimes you got to work harder until you get it. That's all we told her. And then I explained to her, a dyslexic person can process about 2,000 images a minute. Where I think, and it might be a second, I don't know, I think it's a minute. And then the average person is like 250 a minute. So it is a remarkable brain, but the learning process is completely different. So we didn't make a big fuss over it. And the teachers made sure, and she was always the first to put her hand up and try to read. And so she was nurtured at school as well, which is a big problem in regular schools, right?
Yep.
You have the issue like with the dyslexic kid where the parents or the teachers just didn't want to mess with it, right?
Yep.
And she's doing great. She's actually running Storm Taekwondo. I've not taught one normal class. I told you we got all those students. We have awesome reviews, and more reviews than anybody else does, and they're all real. It's not me. It's not family. They're all real reviews, right? That's her. She's 18 years old. She was 17 when she started running. I only run the team, right, with another coach. So, there's no stopping her. There's nothing in her head. She's got more confidence, a lot of confidence, right? And to me, that's the most important. If they have confidence, everything else is easy.
I love we were talking beforehand, and I had asked you a question when we first met up because you're helping all these kids unlock their mental capacity. And I asked you this question. You're like, I had to sit and think about it because you sit, as you condition your mind, you delete certain things that aren't useful, and so you're like, I had to go home and really think about it. So like, what was that like? What was it like for you, and what led you down this path?
So first of all, you said, well, I'm going to ask you what built my mental toughness.
Yeah.
Okay. And even my wife is amazed that I have such little to recall, right? Because she's of course very curious about my childhood, and so I had to go home and at least find a few markers because I literally deleted things that I just didn't think were useful or didn't like or didn't whatever, And I had quite a bit going on. I had a alcoholic and drug addict mother and an alcoholic father. My father's a functional alcoholic that taught me most of my traits are him: loyalty, hard work, telling the truth, never letting social or financial pressure change your mind. Like these are things that are part of my makeup. And remember, back then we didn't have social media. We had a landline, right? We had our friends. So the majority of your personality actually did come from your parents. And he was the only stable one I had, right? So, I think early on, my mental toughness came from embarrassment, right? So one of the earliest things I can remember was my dad turned our one-story house into a two-story house, kind of contracted himself, put a second story on, like the base of it, and then it literally rained for a week straight. Well, in the older days, every road just had a big ditch. They didn't really have the normal drainage systems. So the ditches were 3 to almost 5 feet deep. They were overflowing for a week. So I remember sitting in a corner watching the ceiling, the drywall fall in, and everything we own, including every photograph I've ever had. I got like 3 photographs of my entire life. That's why I take so much video, right?
Wow.
And photos of my own kids, and my wife does too, thank God. So that wasn't okay. That wasn't really so traumatizing. I was a kid, right? But now I got a decade of he never recovered from that, right? Plus he had just started his own business, and he wasn't a very good business guy. Wasn't great with money. He was great with everything else, but money was definitely something I didn't learn from my father. So I always joke it. I had the house was Sanford & Son. I had cars in the driveway and equipment, and we had the tar paper and that siding before the siding goes on. No windows for a long time upstairs. Then when I finally had a room up there, it was just windows, and it was all 2x4s and wood, like for a decade, well over until he died. I finished it when he died.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how bad it was, right? So, I was the embarrassment plus the behavior of my mother, things like that. So the next thing is, so you add that, and I'm already kind of the black sheep, and you can see the neighbors feel sorry for me, and they're talking about, I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
I was a fairly sharp kid, right? So, but whatever. So that really does, it teaches you to read the room. It teaches you to you walk in the room, how you size people up, and I'm sure you have a story, but some of the most successful people can really, they really can read what's going on. You can predict what's going to happen before it's going to happen. You can see what a person's like in a very short amount of time. So I think that helped me in that way, because you didn't trust easily, but you know how to play the game.
Yep.
So then, I used to go to my cousins on the weekends in Troy because, I was either home alone getting in trouble and seeing what was going on, or I was over there. We were still alone, but we were at my aunt's house because she worked at the racetrack. She wasn't home till late. But I'd come home and then I'd hang out with my neighbors. And my neighbors would tell me the story how my mom, was passed out in the middle of the road and they'd have to drive around her to go home. And, and I'm a kid, right?
Yeah.
I'm still in elementary school or whatever, so now I'm getting that. And they all would beat my ass. They all had brothers they could fight. I couldn't fight. And they were all older than me. So, if I tried to fight back, I'd get and I got my ass kicked plenty of times, right? But just the amount of embarrassment. So that's why you can't embarrass me. There's nothing you can say or do. So that's one of the elements of when people are trying to provide social pressure or try to embarrass me. It doesn't match anything I've gone through in my life, right? So, and then a third one that I thought, because I had to think all these back up when you had mentioned this. Somehow in elementary school, I had the highest high jump, right? And back then, you really didn't put gym clothes on, at least not in my class. You just wore whatever
you wore
wore.
jeans and whatever shoes and
Well, they had me at the high school. Somehow I got qualified for this regional event, and it didn't occur to me. I didn't even know to think until like a week before the event that I might need shorts, right? My dad never got me shorts. I don't know if he couldn't afford it. I don't know if he was too busy. He worked really hard. One thing about my dad, he never missed a day of work, drinking or not. The guy never missed a day of work, and he worked really hard. And I appreciate that more than I'm a dad, right? So here I am at this event, only guy in jeans and a tore up shirt. I had no good clothes on. Probably didn't have a good haircut. I used to have a lot of hair, actually. And then one of these middle or high schoolers comes up that kind of knows me through, I think her sister was in my class with me, and starts having this big talk how, like, this depends on me and our school is represented. Like, I've never been in that situation in my life. So they put the bar like 2 feet off the ground, just the height of the mat, right? And all you got to do is jump over to warm up. I knocked it down twice in the warm up. I swear to God, I was the highest jumper by far, even in the middle school. I was in elementary school. I outdid the middle school.
Yeah.
When I was in my school, I couldn't cut. It killed me. I will never forget the embarrassment of both showing up in jeans. And it was because I was wearing jeans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
wearing jeans trying to get over a lot. I couldn't even imagine.
So I've got a lot of things, and it can get pretty dark, right? But those are just a few of the embarrassment specific things that kind of built my mentality.
So then what does that pursuit look like? What does that look like as you climb over that embarrassment? Because you have these experiences. What does that look like to apply?
Okay, well, I have to go to the next, the overcoming fear portion. Okay, so there's a couple more markers, and I don't want to get too much because I don't want to sound like I was not a tough guy until actually I trained martial arts, right? But I had kids that I actually had a gym teacher that I don't even know why he targeted me, but he would kind of sanction the kids to pick on me, right? Maybe it's because I looked. Maybe I didn't respond to him the right way. I don't know. I didn't really know how to respond to him. I was not a jock. Yeah. I was very athletic, but I never had any sports experience, right? So I would get picked on while we were waiting for the gym to open. And I'll never forget this guy named Joe Rohr. And we were friends after this, right? But a little big, he lived in a trailer park, so they got picked on all the time. They had a fight, and not a bad trailer park, but an area where there's a lot of kids they can play. I'm not trying to say trailer parks are bad. I'm just trying to say that there's just a lot of kids and you kind of survived out there, know? And so my dad told me, because I told him I was getting picked on, he said, tell the teachers, yeah, they don't care. Tell the gym, yeah, they don't care. He said, here's what you do. And my dad was a very, very tough man. Very tough man. He was unbelievable, right? He says, you tell him nicely one time, please don't touch me. Okay. He goes, if they even look like he's going to touch you again, he says, you hit him and you do not stop. I don't care if you got to pick up a chair. I don't care what you hit him with. I don't care what you do to him. You do not stop till a teacher shows up and pulls you off. That's a tall ask for a terrified kid, right?
Yeah.
I make no mistake. I was not of the mindset that I was tough, right? I was terrified. But this is my father. And again, lack of all these videos and social media, the only guidance I had, my mom was useless, right? So I had my father, who I respected, right? Okay. So I did it, and I hit him. Boom. And then I forgot to keep going.
Oh, no.
He beat my ass. I remember just swinging me back and down the hall. And I remember getting tagged for the first time in the head pretty hard and feeling the burn. You know what I mean? But here's what I learned. He never picked on me again. It didn't matter that I won.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I carry on to all my athletes. You don't have to win. You just have to try. Right?
Yep.
And I've got plenty of other scenarios where I've had to do that and where I really thought I was going to lose, both socially, physically, get hurt. And it never really worked out that way. We seemed to be okay. And then the aftermath seemed to be okay because you were willing to do the hard thing. So I think I started unlocking that the more fearful I was, the more I would go at it.
Ooh. I love that, and I love it because it ties into what you said at the very beginning of like, you know, having all these businesses, and you're like, I make plenty of mistakes. I'm making mistakes all the time, because that is where we're gonna learn. We're not gonna learn from just winning.
Yeah.
If you're just handed stuff, if you're just win, you're just you won the magic lotto ticket.
100%.
How do you duplicate that?
Well, what I tell the kids is lose every way you can lose. If you keep losing, you figured out every single thing you can do wrong. Eventually, those things will not happen, and you will do the right things. A guy I really respect, Master Shin, Grandmaster Shin now, okay? He said that he was very, very accomplished in Taekwondo and a very stoic, nice guy, never wanted to brag. In fact, I had him do a seminar one time, and I forced him to tell my kids actually what his record was like, because he was in 88 Olympic camp. And he's like, no. I'm like, you got to understand, these guys are on social media now. They have to hear these things. It's not like the old days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so he did. But what he said was if you do something long enough, it is impossible not to get good at it. Right. And so I tell the kids, show them you are willing to fail in front of them. Take away the power. Show them that you're willing to lose. Because a lot of times they're mismatched. You go to local tournaments. They realize Storm's in the logo and they want to see you lose. So they'll put you, they don't do weigh-ins and a lot of these things like this. So they will purposely put our athletes in divisions that could be technically unwinnable. I don't care. I really don't. I said it's a compliment. It's not an official event.
Yeah.
It's a compliment.
Yep.
So go lose. Show them you're willing to lose. Don't let them win.
Yeah.
So I really work on, now if they don't do their best, we have very tough conversations. All right? Because listen, the only thing that you can't do is not try.
Yeah.
I will take 10 of the worst athletes with heart, and I will get rid of the talented athletes that don't try. I literally kick them off the team. I will even tell you a story, and this coach I'm working with right now is the one that told me. This is how little I've even thought about it. He goes, Shane, I have people that drive like 4 or 5 states every weekend to train with me. Every club in our area has lost athletes that are competitive to me. Never once have you lost an athlete to me. Your parents and athletes are so loyal. Now, I've sent them athletes when I didn't really have a performance program and I just didn't have the time to train them back when I was new at it. I would send athletes there. Like when my instructor
left your program.
No, I would send them there because I'm doing them a favor. I want them to go where they can progress if I can't give it to them, which is an ego problem that a lot of the coaches have. And the only way I can reconcile this, instead of saying I'm just better than other coaches, is I've already solved my ego issues in other businesses. I've already done that. I've been that guy where I did have to puff up my chest. So it's not that I'm not normal. We're all normal.
Yeah.
But I just don't do it in Taekwondo. Make sense?
Yep.
So really, this system where you have to work or not be on the team. You're not going to not work. I don't care how good you are. I've sent one of my best athletes off the team, and the guy says, "Well, how good?" I don't care how good he is. I don't have to be the guy in the chair with the great athlete. I just want them to continue to grow and do the hard work,
Hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work every single time.
It's a meme, but it's true.
Yeah.
The problem is they read the memes
and
they don't know where the wall is. One of the 18-year-olds I was telling you about, I finally got him squared away, and I said, listen, you're going to have to push through these walls, and you're not going to recognize it. Oh, no problem. I said, no, you're not going to recognize the wall. I promise you. So we got somebody over that's a 70, fights at 68. He's walks at 74 kilos, very experienced, world level athlete, and we're sparring. This guy's pretty big too. And, he gets body knocked out and, catches a head kick that not dangerous one, but, gets hit pretty hard, and he's starting to flame out. And when he's starting to flame out, I whispered to him, I said, remember that wall? He says, yeah. I said, this is the wall. This is the wall. Get your ass back out there and you fucking fight. This is the wall. Otherwise, you're just not made for this. I'm sorry. There's a point where you're an adult.
Yeah.
And he did. He did it. To his credit, he did it. So they just don't see the walls. I have to recognize that myself. When I'm finally giving up, I'm like, why am I? This is exactly why everybody quits.
They hit the wall.
That's it.
And then either they don't have that internal voice that pushes them, or they're, I think it's also helpful to have a coach. No matter what you're doing in life, whether it's Taekwondo or you're an entrepreneur, to have somebody that recognizes that and says, get back up.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, Kevin Brown, he's one of the most savage motherfuckers you've ever met.
Savage, yeah.
He is savage, but he's honest.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way with him, right? So if you want to really be exposed, cry to him. It lasts about 8.5 seconds.
You picture going to Kevin to cry.
You have a better chance of covering a bull than you do getting through the 8 seconds with him with a lie.
Mm-hmm. But people need that.
I agree.
So he wasn't a client at the time. I was in this entrepreneur mastermind group when I first started my business, and there's this gentleman in there. He had a web design company, and he was in the hot seat. Like, everybody had their chance in their hot seat, right? And so you'd like unleash your problems you're having in your business, and everybody there would help chip in. And so he's talking about, he's had this business for 20 years and used to be super successful. He used to have all these clients, and at this point in time, he was like, I've lost all these clients, and I'm I'm running out of business, and I don't even know if I love this anymore, and blah blah blah. And people were like being so sympathetic to him. They're like,
boo-hoo.
Boo-hoo. But they were like, oh, John, you should go put a post on Facebook. And like, they're recommending all these easy things. And I was like getting frustrated. Like, I was getting pissed is what I was getting. And so I literally busted into an on-plan tirade. And I was like, what you really need to do is stop being a pussy. And he was like, and I like watched this guy break in front of me. And I'm like, what you really need to do is stop being a pussy. Right now, I'm like, you told me that you had all these clients, but you haven't picked up the phone and called any of them.
Why did they leave? Even if you don't get them back, why did you leave?
I'm like, you got to pick up the phone. You got to have like either that, or you got to say, I don't love this anymore, and quit.
Right.
And this guy, I watched him shatter right in front of me, and I felt bad. I went home.
But he's not made up for if he's not made for it if he shatters.
So I felt so bad. So I went home and I told my wife about it. And I told my wife what I said. I almost had to sleep on the couch. Like, she was like, I can't believe you said that to that guy. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I should call up and apologize. Like, he looked like he was pretty hurt, right? I didn't, thankfully. And so I come back the next week and he had to recap what he did for the previous week. And so I sit down, like, I make eye contact with him, and he looks at me, and he was like, this has been the best week of my life. Right. He was like, I left here, and he was like, I was so mad at Jason. He was like, I was so butthurt about it. I was so like in my feelings. And he's like, I went home, and he was like, I was so irate. He was like, he had drove to Ann Arbor from Ann Arbor. And he's like, I drove to
That makes sense. That tracks.
He goes to Ann Arbor, and he's sitting with his wife, and he was like, you would not believe what this guy said to me. And he starts telling his wife what I said to him. And she couldn't make eye contact with him. She looked down, and he was like, I instantly knew that what you said to me, you had enough balls to say it, and nobody else in my life is calling me out. They're just all patting me on the back. Right. And he's like, so I instantly realized what my problem was. And I picked up the phone, I started dialing. And he's like, I just had the best week in my business that I've had in 10 years at least.
There you go.
And so anyways, we ended up working together. He ended up hiring me as a coach because he needed somebody. It isn't about giving you comfort and pillows. Sometimes you got to shake people up.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth. And I will tell you, the wife thing is important, right? Because I met my wife when I was in the farm. That's a whole nother thing about my mental toughness, but we'll stay off the topic for the moment. But she would live near the farm, and she'd ride her horse out there, and we met there, right? At like 15 years old, right? 14 to 15 years old. And then we dated, and then we didn't date for 6 years, and then we dated again and got married.
Wow.
Right? And I was so driven, because again, I was still insecure. So I wore a 3-piece suit. I was I made sure everybody knew I would do what I said, and I was very, very loyal. And I worked really hard to prove that I had value, right? And once I got successful, I got rid of the suit, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you don't, if my work doesn't say it for itself, then, but at the time I was very, so, but the thing is, a lot of, you would, when you're working like that, you do attract women that want to date you, but I just really never felt that. I was so busy, focused of it. So I had a few relationships, but really when I got back with Lisa and then we got married, I never felt more focused. And she's very honest, right? So like when she's like, yeah, you kind of screwed the pooch on this and it's your fault, and she's not wrong, I think that's really helpful. Plus having somebody, knowing you're not chasing trying to figure out what your relationship life is going to be like and things like that, not chasing those things, knowing you have a plan, you're going to have a family, and like it's like a motivator, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think you have to pick right. It's really hard these days. And I even tell my son, I don't even know where you're going to get a wife these days with what you see online, right? It's very difficult, and vice versa for my girls. But I even think it's kind of harder now for the guys. It's weird, But anyways, I just think making the right choice and having a really strong partner, and I know people don't like to differentiate men and women, but I think they both have an extremely important value for that.
Absolutely.
I just think that is
it's
one
important
of
to
the
recognize
things.
differences. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's not a weakness. Going back to autism or sex or whatever, race, whatever. It's not a weakness, but we got to acknowledge that there are differences.
Yeah, they're remarkable. I think women are remarkable. I think in general they're way more remarkable than men in some ways.
5,000%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they start early. They get the hormones, intelligence, work ethic early, and they far outlast men in terms of what they can do, what they're doing, what their supposed jobs are, what they like to do, right?
Yeah.
Men are probably useless till about 16, 17 years old, but they go hard.
Yeah.
And they go right off the charts for about a third of their life, right? And they drop, right? And meanwhile, women are picking up the slack the whole time, and nobody realizes it.
Yep.
How can you not think you don't need this in your life?
And they make it look so easy. You don't recognize it. It's like crazy.
And they got to mature sooner because they got the kids. They can't ignore the kids. We can ignore stuff, right? We can pretend we're busy, right? They're doing so much more. I feel like men take about 10 years to be good husbands, even if they're good people.
5,000%.
It takes 10 years.
Oh, man.
And they got to put up with their asses
absolutely.
for 10 years.
10 years.
If we're
training
good.
us.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah, if we're good people, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just interesting. I just, that's a quick note.
I can relate to that so much, the 10-year period of like training and like, I think I'm here.
Yeah,
I think I've arrived.
Just thankful
Maybe.
she put
I
up
don't know.
with me.
Exactly.
Honestly,
Exactly. That's so cool. That's to have, like, my wife's the same way. In fact, when I first got with her, I had to like pad myself because she's brutal. She's a savage. She's like Kevin, like I'd get home and I'd be like, I'd want to cry about something in the sense of like, not cry, but like, give me some like pity or like whatever,
Right.
Nope. She'd
And
be
it's
like
the best
right
thing she
away.
could
Like,
do.
it's the best thing she could do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then I'll tell you something. You were talking about the progression of the mental toughness for athletes. I got a couple stories. One story is I had this one gal, her name was Gabrielle, but we called her Thor because she was a savage athlete, very great girl. And she's one of the few that had everything. They had money, but the parents treated her and developed her with responsibility. And she didn't get everything for free, no matter how much money they had, and just great family values. But her mental toughness was built because she was so nice, right? But she turned out to be a phenomenal athlete. She got invited to be, because she was so young, an academy athlete at the Olympic Training Center. She couldn't really be a resident athlete because she was still too young. But, she really did a lot. And the very first tournament after COVID was a Michigan State Championship. We always would fight her as a cadet, cadet and juniors both, right? Because I think she was a junior. So junior and senior she fought. So she would feat. And of course, they weren't her weight because at local tournaments, they don't necessarily. So she had very tough competition. So anyways, two things. The day before, she had already ran, like less than 12 hours before, she ran a varsity level track meet. So I was concerned about her knees because there's a whole thing about, the number one injury for high school age girls is ACL tears because of just hormones and things where they can dry out in college. And so you got to be careful. If their knees hurt, don't fight them, right? And they didn't hurt, but I was just concerned we were overloading her for two events. But anyways, we did it. We're in a match, and one girl, very tall, decent fighter, but not experienced like her, the electronic system quit working, right? And so she's pounding on the girl, on the body, trying to score, and even hitting the head, nothing's scoring. So she's like, and she's down like 1 point. It's like 5-6. Some penalties or something happened. And she's like, what to do? And I'm like, well, the only thing you can do is knock her out. At the time, that division had knockout rules. And she's like, and remember, I would always work with the teenage girls and say, listen, this is not me being a dictator. I need you to communicate, is what I'm telling you. Working. Are you not comfortable with it? You want to do something else? I really encourage them to use their voice. The biggest part of my program is I want them to find their voice, especially girls. They got to be able to say no to things. They got to be able to say what they want. I just don't want compliance, which is a cultural thing as well. And then women in general tend to do that. So I've always worked with her, and she's very quiet, to speak her mind. So she's like, I'm not knocking her out. Okay. She goes, she's not as good as I am. I don't want to hurt her. I know this girl. I am not knocking her out. Okay. And what I told her was, cut the girl at the edge of the ring, throw a big back leg, and she'll eat it, and you'll knock her out. So she didn't do that. And I was all right. I'm not going to argue with it. I like that she spoke up. I'm not going to hammer her for speaking up. That's fine. And I don't want to hurt anybody either. But I mean, a knockout was the only way to win if she wanted to win, right? And it's completely legal. So I'm not being a jerk, you know? And so she did exactly what I said, but she pulled the kick. And the reason I know is we're trained to kick and be stable. So if you kick instability, you'll kind of fall back. If you kick and hit and you run past, that means you didn't deliver the kick, right? So you can tell in the video. So she threw the head kick I asked, but she kind of flew out of the ring and took a penalty, but it scored. Somehow the system turned back on. And like in 20 seconds, she put like that many points up, right? And finished the match. Yeah, because she was a better fighter, like she had said, you know? And but again, that was a big success that she spoke up. A second situation, same thing, this is a girl that we currently have that's very competitive. We're at a tournament where the guy's the event director, right? And this referee, the worst one in the state, has the mental status of Joe Biden. He's an international referee. Decides, while there's literally someone from Australia running the event that's also an international referee, decides just for her ring, she's not going to turn the electronics on for the head. So I'm like, well, I already told her she won't do it. Well, aren't you paying her? Well, yeah. It's not even a sanctioned event. Like, this is an Olympic scoring system. This is not some chintzy system, right?
Yeah.
So the guy next to me tells me, yeah, they still haven't put the headgear on. Really? So I'm telling the referee, are we pretending we have electronic headgear, or are we paid for electronic headgear? So I'm saying this, trying to figure out why they're not doing it. The event director walks out, whispers to the referee to disqualify me. So I've got $2,000 easily worth of athletes at this event. Now, the guy doesn't like me. That's a whole different problem. But he would rather disqualify my athlete, when I brought him over $2,000 of revenue, than go to the referee and say, either do your job or get out of the seat, right? Like what? So meanwhile, this is going on, and I was going to let him disqualify her because, trust me, that would not play out great. I said, if you want this to go down this way, I'm happy to tell the story, you know? And then she turns around in the middle of all this and says, Coach, can I just fight? Because they can manually judge. It just doesn't work good.
Yeah.
And the kicker is, I didn't even realize the girl she's getting ready to fight just got back from world championships. My girl wasn't even a cadet yet, right? And so, you know, the electronics would have been helpful. Now, she did win the match. I didn't even know the girl had done that, but it worked out okay. But I had to ask for help. It was a mess, right? So anyway, she says, hey, Coach, can I just fight? And I was like, I'm not going to smash her after I've been telling her to speak up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, honey, we can fight. All right, let's do it. And I wasn't going to, you know, then cut her off and take away all the work I had done that she could speak. That was the first time she ever spoke up. Right. So these are little lessons that nobody thinks about that you're doing for these kids. It's not about Taekwondo. I don't care if she's very accomplished now. I don't care if she ever fights again. As long as she keeps helping and doing Taekwondo or doing things she likes and uses it for
being able to use her voice.
Yeah. Right.
And how hard is that going to be when obviously you're in your emotion? You're passionate about this is not being done right.
Oh, I'm pissed.
You're pissed.
Oh yeah, him and I are not in a good spot, but she diffused the whole thing.
For you, and what discipline for you to be able to calm down and recognize that her voice, because I can't imagine how many coaches, parents would stop when that kid speaks up. But how huge is that?
Yeah, right. So it's the little things. And nobody, you know, if you know me, you know. If you don't, you don't. It's okay. You know, I think, well, you know, from the outside, I might look like a very intense, you know, coach. I've had athletes come from other high level systems and go, yeah, you wouldn't believe what the other coaches say about you. It's not, none of it's true. It's just, I can't believe they said it. And I don't even ask. I just tell myself, listen, I said, I don't even want to hear what they said. I go, you assess for yourself. I don't want to say a word. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
You can make your own assessment.
That's all it is. That's amazing. That's so awesome. Again, to shed that, not even care about what people are thinking, but come and see it for yourself.
Right. Well, that's part of the embarrassment thing. Like I just don't care. I'm not. If they don't have anything to do with my life, I don't owe them anything. I don't need anything from them. Why would I spend time trying to convince those people I'm something? Right. And the people that know me, you don't even have to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And honestly, if it comes up and they're around, everybody else comes and corrects the record. I don't even have to do it.
Well, again, you said like people don't even know, right? And I think if people started off listening to this podcast and they're like, like slap the kid up or whatever, you're like, this is going to be controversial, right?
Right.
But then if you sit and listen to the whole thing, it's like, oh, but he's letting that girl like have her voice, and like, but it's like it's some of the steps of what you're doing to get that mental toughness, but also encourage them to use their voice, to be disciplined.
Right. And in the same girl, this is great. She told me, sometimes after training, because I push her really hard, she has designs to go to world championships. So I'm like, nothing else matters. We're going to risk losing these events by practicing things you're going to need for the end game. I don't care if you lose, but you have to be very intense yourself, and we have to pay attention to these things if that's what you want. So be sure that's what you want. So I'm pushing it really hard. Aside from injuries, if injuries are there, I get a doctor to clear up, but we're pushing hard. So anyways, she told me like a few months ago, and this was great, and I even teach her a little bit about it, so we're always laughing about it, but she goes, I go home, and I'm so mad at you, and she goes, then I wake up, and I go, he's right. He's actually right, and she goes, I just feel better, and I just keep going. And it took a lot for her to say that, because a lot of people would not. Yeah. And I'm really proud of that, because, I kind of can predict. You do this long enough, you can predict what's going to happen before it happens. It's amazing what you can predict in divisions and brackets and things that don't look like on paper. Like, yeah, I just have a feeling based on what you know. So it's nice to have an athlete truly trust. I think that builds the trust. Yep. Trust is everything.
It's everything. Two things. One, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off.
Yes. Yes. Even when it's to yourself.
To yourself. Yeah. Especially when we have to eat our own medicine.
That's the worst.
That's the worst, right? I had something second, but I can't remember what it was. But seriously, when the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And to be able to wake up and have that acknowledgement and be like, he was right.
Right.
It's huge. It's a huge step.
Right. So it just gives more confidence when we say, these are what we have to do. And it's like, okay. And then also we're making them be leaders. Like when she is injured or we have off days, we're resting her body, she's teaching and using her voice, and it's getting really, really good. We do it with all the kids, not just the high level athletes. We really give them a chance to cycle through. And like almost every one of my high level athletes are coached. They teach at Storm. Okay. And a lot of them actually get paid to do it, right? Because they're there on a schedule. And so when I'm talking to the parents, I'm like, you understand that the people teaching them are so passionate about Taekwondo. They're all world level fighters. This guy just won the Grand Prix. She just won the Pan Am Games and Nationals. And, and so I'm pointing out all the different athletes. And they're like, wow, so they're teaching what's relevant now. And I think the parents like to see that, it's the whole thing builds on itself if you have an earnest process and foundation,
Well, it's like, how many people do you have? How many kids do you start off at that 6, 7, and they go all the way through?
I don't know as numbers right now, but our mini trooper class can be anywhere from 5 to 20.
Yeah.
So that's under 5, and a lot of the mini troopers are already in the big class. We got 4-year-olds that are doing the big class, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Like little kids, I want to fight. I said, well, if you want to fight, you have to do the whole class. The whole class is hard. They're doing push-ups and sit-ups and squats. Okay. So sure enough, he did the whole class. So I went and found him some gear and I let him fight, and I don't make him do that class, but I see how they can hold up. So he fluctuates. But, and then many times, we get 50 to 75 check-ins a day. So you figure, if you're at 5 to 20 on little guys. So, we've had the 5 and 6 o'clock class, which are 6 and up, be 30 to 45 pretty consistently. So we have very, and what's interesting is we only require 2 days a week to progress. So many people come 4 or 5 days a week. It's insane. So that just shows they really love the program. It's not that they have to go. They want to come.
And it's like another lesson in life is not doing the minimum, right? Here's the minimum. You show up twice.
Right.
But if you want to be really good at anything, it's that consistency. And I forgot who you had said, if you do something consistently enough.
Master Shin.
Master Shin. If you do something consistently, it's impossible to not get good at it.
Right.
And if you put that 4 or 5 times into it.
Yeah, well, here's how our team's structured. And I even had to argue with my other coach about this. If you're not going to compete, don't be here. Right? Don't. If you're not going to give 100% and show up, you can't miss it. They're required to come 3 out of 4 days. Now, there are situations at different ages where they have things that I'll never cancel academics or other things that pop up. But if your parents can physically take you on those days, you go. If there's a cross training, if your parents are willing to drive, because it's not really a required thing because it came up.
Yeah.
But if your parents tell me they could drive and you said no, you don't get to be on the team, right? If you don't put 100% effort, I will kick you off the team, because that whole theory about a one low performer or one negative person in a group dramatically kills your momentum and poisons the other people. It is so much more than a meme.
It absolutely is. Oh my God. Again, going back to the choosing your clientele, setting your culture. Because if you, people will not survive. You know this. People will not survive if they're not a fit for that culture.
Right. I just had a couple kids I had to kick off the team. It was their parents' fault. It really wasn't their fault, though they were terribly negative and low performing because their parents sanctioned it. But we were making progress. And I don't even want to tell you what the parent did. It was terrible, but they basically got them kicked. And they probably didn't even tell the kids it was. They probably told the kids it was their fault, right? But the problem was that dad texts me and says, well, I'm glad you're not here to mentally abuse my kids anymore. And I'm like, that's interesting. So my answer to that is, if you think that was mental abuse, you failed as a parent. Sorry. But, you could say that and try to poison my reputation. I could bring you 100 parents that would just so aggressively argue what positive things we've done for their kids. So, I don't really care. And meanwhile, the guy that knows him better says, yeah, he used to brag that he used to be in a program where they hit him with sticks, and that was great. So it's just rhetoric, it's just a lashing out, but that really happens. But again, only people who left my team, I've sent them. They've never left because they weren't getting what they wanted. The guy never never once came into school in like 7 months at all. If he was concerned, wouldn't you walk in the club and say, I'm not happy? I have an audio recording of, I literally asked, I knew he didn't like me, right? But I said, so any problems? No, everything's great.
Yeah.
So I have that.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on,
That's a way of justifying because you got kicked out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People will stick and find every negative thing possible.
Yeah, it's okay. Again,
it's okay.
No social or financial pressure is going to change how I handle things.
Yeah.
It's
phenomenal. Tell me, so how do you talked about setting up the systems and processes. What is, what drives that?
That's interesting. I think some of it is reading. You read, I can't think of the book's name. It's a very popular book, but it talks about entrepreneurship and how, it revolved around that pie company, Travis Pie Company.
Yeah.
I can't remember the book, but it talked about processes and things like that. So you got to be able to have a process that everybody can follow. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so and then I'm being an IT guy. I had 2 web development companies for 30 years. I have a print shop. My son has a sandblasting business that we use AI to handle all the phone calls, messages, and set up all the processes so he doesn't have to. And it works great. He's only been in business going on 3 years, and he's already in 6 figures. He's a super hard worker. It's a very tough business.
Yeah.
Right. But he's doing fantastic. He's 21. Right?
Wow.
He's 21.
Wow. Yeah.
And he was the kid that I had to grab by the neck and drag till he was like, I wanted to beat his ass at 17. I threatened to.
Yeah.
But as soon as he turned on and all the lessons you teach them that they think they don't pay attention, they do. So this is a hell of a man, right? But again, men are different. Men want to shy away from certain things, and they, that whole meme that, just when your son realizes his dad was right, his son thinks he's wrong.
Yeah.
I even told him, I said, one day, whether I'm dead or not, you're going to realize what I did and why. And I go, and don't feel bad that I'm dead. Don't be like, oh no, and be sad. I said, but understand that's how life works, especially with men. You'll eventually figure it out, and you want to come tell me whether I'm there or not, who knows. I said, but you do the best you can with, everybody makes mistakes, but I said, I'm going to do what you can hire a therapist. I tell my kids this, you can hire a therapist at 30 years old and tell them what an asshole your dad was. I said, but until then, I'm going to have my foot on your neck, and I'm going to push you guys. Anytime I have a control or a way to communicate to you to make you better, it doesn't matter how well you're doing. If I see a way to improve, same with the athletes, same with everything, I'm going to help you improve, period. And he's amazing. I literally could die tomorrow and never worry about my children.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. You did your job.
Yeah.
Going back to the parents, right?
Yeah, I don't want to die, but I was always, I was fearless that I had my daughter. And I said, I was so scared to die. But what does it matter with me? Because I wanted to be there to make sure that my lessons and the things that I want to teach her were there. And so I was now scared of death. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I could care less until I had children.
Kids change the world. Yeah. Yep. Kids change it. And it's imparting that legacy, right?
Right. And they're great leaders too. I mean, you wouldn't believe already People gravitate to my children for advice. My son has cousins that work with him that some of them one moved from Georgia or South Carolina, one of the North Carolina. They used to live in Georgia. I think it's North Carolina now. But they now live there. I have another niece who goes to MSU that stays at the house. It's a great environment, and they all feed off each other, and it's fantastic. And not everybody has the tools. It's not that they just didn't have the things around them to help push them. So we just have a different set of environmental factors. They're good for the kids. I'm not trying to say we're better, right? But we're an entrepreneurial house. We're really busy. We get a lot done. A lot of them help out with my mother-in-law who has got dementia. So what's nice is they're all chipping in, and we never have to ask. So my kids are extremely kind, right? And so it's just a great environment. So we have kids there all the time, and they're in their 20s, But they're learning from my son. They're learning from my daughter. They're also getting things from each other. It's just a great thing. So it's almost like a theme that at one point all the cousins or family members kind of come into our house at one point in time if it makes sense, and it's just a great thing,
You're impacting more people even then at that point. Yeah. You're bringing in more people into that circle.
That's what I say in the martial arts. I said, if I just get 10 people, whether it's in Taekwondo or not, I always tell my goal, if just one of these conversations, you one day say this to another young person and you help them, that's all I want. So if I got 10 people that affect 10 people, it doesn't have to be Taekwondo.
Yeah.
It could be anything. They could coach any sport. They could have any conversation.
It's the lesson behind whatever the vehicle is.
That's all I live for.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's not about Taekwondo. I don't care if they win. I don't care if they compete. I literally don't tell them to go to these big events. So talk to your parents. Can they afford to go to big events? It's lonely at big events. I even had this talk with the one gal that's currently successful. I said, okay, you've been winning, but what happens when you lose 3 times? When you spend $10,000, $12,000 and lose, what's going to happen? I asked her. Well, we reasoned it out. What are your parents going to say? Right? It's not about me. I don't care. You could just. It's easier to just have them. I can have kids dominating locally in a very short amount of time. It's not a hard thing to do with the right system, right? And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying with the athletes we have, the partners we have a plethora of coaching with myself and a very experienced coach who's literally a USA team coach right now. So we have just depth upon depth between athletes and coaching. But I say, but it's still. I'd rather them win locally, have fun with their friends. They grow up, talk about the favorite coach, talk about how they just had such a great time. Yeah. That's all I want. They don't have to go to these big. My own daughter, she was ranked 2 in the country when she quit, and she's like, "Well, should I?" I'm like, "You have nothing to prove to me. Like, I don't care. You kind of had something to prove to yourself. That's why you did it. Because she came to me and she goes, "I want to be on the team." I'm like, it's a lot of work. No, I would not have brought this to you if I wasn't serious. She became one of the top producers. She was a role model. She helped that Thor girl become successful because she was bigger and stronger, and we really ground her down and made her tough. So she did great. But when it was time, I'm like, you don't have nothing to prove to me. Why don't we focus all this effort onto your future? And she did. She's a very successful financial advisor, and she's amazing.
And she gets to coach.
Yeah, and she actually ran my first Storm school before COVID. Now she's working, but my youngest one is now running the second school.
How do you fit all the time? And I know we talked about systems and stuff like that, but how do you manage all that?
I got to admit, it's getting out of control. And being older, I think I'm looking to take the lower profit things and remove them and focus on the high profit things. But I do, my web companies are run by one guy that's been with me since he got out of college. Right, so he runs everything. So I just push things to him. I had a team in Russia, and with the war and stuff, he happened to be in Belarus, which thank God allowed him to have a visa to leave because you can't leave Russia. So he took over all the work and moved to Poland, right? Because I can pay Poland. There's ways to pay into Russia, but you don't want to do something illegal. I'm big on not doing things that are just not legal, right? So we had to make a bunch of adjustments. But he handles a lot. So I have really. Very few people fit my model because you have to be self-motivated to work for me because they're all remote. But once I find the 1 out of 50, they're like here for decades. Like so I have a really good team. My wife handles all the accounting, and she's kind of been running the print shop. The print shop was was kind of a anomaly. We were using the print shop to support a Taekwondo gear company for printing, but we were down like $1 million a year when they stopped sports during COVID. right? So we tried to turn the shop into a retail. And it takes 2 years to turn any business into a profitable process, right?
Yep.
So now she's just using that to pay off the enormous amount. It's hard to stop a couple $1 million engine overall, without spending money. So it was very, very tough. I don't complain much about it because I just do it again, right? But it doesn't mean you don't have financial penalties and emotional penalties and mental toughness, right? And so that print shop. But anyways, I can't remember. How do I manage it? So I do it with systems and with people, and then you got to turn away things that don't fit. That's the biggest thing is nobody's willing to turn away business. I try to take what fits.
I love it. That's a great answer.
Right.
Have you, and I think about this too, and then I shifted with that other question, but have you had people that have left the system and then they've come back, even maybe people that didn't listen or they weren't a good fit for the system that then came back and thanked you for a lesson that they learned?
Taekwondo or in general?
Anyway, yeah.
Interesting. I'm sure there are. It will take me a moment.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
I have plenty. I'm starting to get a lot of adults coming back and saying, I got a guy just in the Marines. I was trying to avoid because there's a little bit to this, but his name was Skinny Arms, right? And this poor kid, Gabby, that girl,
I watched the video.
and Liberty, this little girl I called the Amazing Asian, and Gabrielle, they pushed each other for a while, and he was in there, and they used to beat the crap. He said right in the video, he used to beat the crap out of him, right? But he was a good fighter, and he got really, really good, but he was skinny, and he said in that video that he would go and cry in the bathroom and then wipe his eyes and come back, but he always did it, and he was just a great kid. Well, he goes in the Marines. The first thing they do before they even hit boot camp is he says there's a lot of like homeless and street guys that the only thing they know is to try to use that imposing will and intimidate and kind of establish dominance just by being bigger and stronger and loud, right? Or attacking somebody. So he's like, yeah, we can do this and we'll both get kicked out of here and we'll probably both take some hits. And whoever might not win, he goes, but he didn't back down is my point. And then when they got to boot camp, because he was also good at jiu-jitsu. This kid was skinny, but he was a beast, right? So like he said, he was tearing through all the same guys. So they either shut up and laid down in the corner or they quit, right? And so he's come telling me, and he didn't even get a chance to tell me because he had to go back, but he's dominating everything. He's dominating, he's the one of the most accomplished at his age. He's running teams. Every job he gets, he's the top guy. And he attributes a lot of that to both the jiu-jitsu, because Kevin had a lot of big play in that too. I don't want to take away from that. Kevin, we had the same mental toughness mindset, right? And it's brutal. If you don't understand what we're doing, it seems really brutal. So he did that. And so I like hearing those stories. Gabby, who's an amazing everything anyways, tries to give me credit for, like things that she's doing, in her life, which, I have a hard time because she's just a remarkable person, but I like that at least the mental toughness portion has allowed her to take risks and do more things. I mean, I get that a lot. So really that's my payoff. Like I said, is in future in life, if even one thing happens that they can attribute to it, that's all I care about. I don't really give a shit about the medals. I really don't.
It's the legacy.
Yeah.
It's how you can improve the world.
Right.
And have you thought about, I know we've had the conversation where you're like driven, you're just driving and you don't put a lot of thought into some things. Have you thought about how much you've reversed the cycles of like your family? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't drink till I was 36 years old.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't want to be that guy. Right. And then not drinking has its own things. You got social pressure. You're a pussy, this and that. I didn't care.
Yeah.
You can't embarrass me.
Yeah.
Then I ended up being the designated driver. I was always the smallest and youngest guy in the group I ran with, and those assholes would get us in fights. And I was beating shit out of guys 2-3 years older and bigger because I wasn't drunk. Not necessarily because I was, if we weren't drunk, they probably would have killed me, right? But I mean, there's a lot of
competitive edge.
Right. Like, again, I don't want to come off like I won every, I just didn't.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't really get decent at Taekwondo till I was in my late 20s. And then I had 2 hip replacements. I have an ACL I've torn through 2 ACLs. Now I need a new knee. So as I was competitive, and I still fought with the bad hips because my son tried to front me out one time. So it's easy for you to say, you're not fighting. I'm like, all right, fucker. I go, I'll fight. And I did. And with the first hip replacement, I fought and did well. I won. And then I fought after my other one. My last one was a full contact match. Like they wanted full like knockout. And a guy from Tunisia who was on the Tunisian team when he was younger was my opponent. And I'm like, but the one thing is the same thing is I had my students there. And I will not tell them how to be mentally tough and risk losing and not risk it. Not many coaches will do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they can say they will, but they don't. There are some really good examples. Yeah, so I'm like, I'll lose, fuck it. I'll show them that it's okay to lose. Of course, it motivated me to train, and I won spectacularly against that guy because I had both hips that time, not just one.
Yeah.
But then I realized my other ACL had got torn, and I can't put a new one in, so I hadn't fought since, and I can't really even kick anymore. I used to fight my kids all the time but I just can't.
Yeah.
I wish I could. I really do. I think it's a good example. I mean, I see people post all the time. You got to be. I'm not going to be able to walk if I keep wobbling that knee around. So I find other ways to motivate. But I actually regret. I don't talk about much, but I regret not being able to be that example. I would still be kicking with them
if it wasn't for the body.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. That's such a cool story. Again, it's walking the walk and putting yourself in a situation where, hey, I most likely lose this in front of my team.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of pride thing.
Yeah.
Going back to that not caring what people think, there's a lot of pride that a coach, like you said, they wouldn't put themselves in that situation because they want their kids to see them win, or they, there's a lot of pressure on that.
So my instructor, he goes, "You going to fight today?" I'm like, "Well, sir," I go, "my body feels like crap. I just had it, it was only 20, 30 weeks out of my hip replacement. It was not long." I said, "The only reason I wouldn't is anxiety." And I go, and I'm not letting fear and anxiety be the reason I don't fight. I mean, I can figure out how to get my body. It took me an hour to warm up. Like it was, all I was doing was trying to go low to high, like, because headshots are the number one thing. And I did it, and I pulled it off. I fought 3 guys, and the first 2 were younger than me, but in their 30s. I was in my 40s. The last one was a head coach on a team, and a little cocky dude at like 20 or something like that. And he was running his mouth, and he was like, "Looks like we're going to get, intimate today," or just some weird shit, and I wasn't even warming up. I was coaching the whole time, so I didn't really get fully warmed up that day, right? And man, I made sure I had no cardio. I pounded the crap out of that guy. I was punching him, knocking him out. I didn't realize it was not knockout. I hadn't fought that much, and this tournament actually wasn't full contact. Man, at the very end, I caught him in the face, and he gave himself a timeout and grabbed his knees. It was basically a standing KO. And I was asking the ref, "Why didn't you 8 count?" He goes, "If I 8 counted it, you would have lost." He's like, and it was the end of the match, so I just let him recover.
Yeah.
But I taught him a lesson because he was a cocky little fucker. You know what I mean? And I have the video to back it up. I will never say anything I can't back up, right? So, but it was ugly, like when you're a guy, they call me Robo Fighter because I don't have any range. I have something called dystonia, so my muscles are always tight. I have no, if I didn't do certain procedures every 90 days, I would be like those dudes in a wheelchair where my arms and neck would be tilted and things like that. So I've always had that. I didn't realize I had it at the time because it gets worse middle-aged, right? But so it's a lot. It was a lot for me to do those things, to even kick to the head,
Well, I think that's we talked beforehand. A lot of the challenges you're dealing with, dystonia and spine and a bunch of other things, and it's like doctors are even amazed that you're up and you're walking and doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah, it's true.
In the audience, they don't know that.
No,
and nobody would know that unless you told them that story. And I think that speaks for the mental toughness all in itself.
Yeah, I don't want my students and parents and things like that to be like, there's a lot more to it, but it's not gonna beat me. Number one, I'm not gonna go on pain meds. Number one, I get sick. Number two, I think getting on painkillers is the thing that kills you. I mean, you can handle the pain. You should be able to handle the pain. Keep moving. The more it hurts, the more you get up. That's just kind of how I look at it, right? So I don't think I'm gonna follow the path the doctors think I am. So I'm not gonna tell people what the doctors say because, like I said, 1 out of 50 are right about anything, maybe, right? So I'm just not doing it, and I've always been able to defy odds. So it is what it is. We'll see what happens.
Love it. Just rolling. You're making it happen.
Yeah, that's it.
So what is next?
What's next?
Yeah.
Honestly, we had a first year of merging teams with the other coach and myself. And once we got some of the negativity out, we ramped up very aggressively. So I think, and we have now a merged team. There's always a little bit of a, them and us mentality when you merge teams. There's none of that now. None of it. Every parent's bought in for both of us. All the parents love both of us. Him and I are working very, very well together. So I think that you're going to see a major spike in the the progress of these kids. And again, I don't care how high of level they go. Some kids, I'm like, let's just fight locally. Someone can't afford to go to big areas, you know. I am going to figure out how to raise $50,000 a year for the kids with the fundraiser. I got to figure out how to do that because I want to get them to Europe. I want to get them to Asia, things like that to fight. So that's one thing. Plus, my daughter, Megan, she's already added like 5 or 6 kids that kind of drop in with the team right now to see how they can handle it, you know. And once they hit a certain belt level, we're going to force them to join the team or not, right? But so now we're going to have an influx of kids that, you know, everything they're teaching in regular class, all the fundamentals, the same fundamentals we do in team. It's not like, you know, a lot of people do what's easy. We'll do the old school back leg. It looks great fast. Parents think it's cool, but a little slower progression on fundamentals and then going into that makes the kids stronger, better, faster, gives them tools to be competitive sooner if they want to compete. We don't care if they do. Like we invite them to that. If they don't like it, we're not telling them to go because we tell them you show up, you work. If you don't like it, go back to regular class. Like this is not our comp team is not about
for everybody.
Yeah, not for everybody. But they're handling it great, right? So I think that you're going to see a new, because you're going to have these kids aging out, and I'm a big fan of if they're the age they got to work, let them work. I'm not going to force them to compete once they can work. Some of them have to help their family. Let them work. So I'm more interested in how they age into adults. But if they have the finances or the structure to continue to compete when they're older, that's fine too, right? But we're feeding the team. So I think you're just going to see a much larger footprint of Storm Taekwondo. And then on my business side, I think that you're going to see we're paying off some debt. I mean, it was a rough deal through COVID. And again, I don't really talk about that much because I just don't care. I mean, we'll figure it out. But it's really ramping up quickly and getting caught up quickly. So we'll just get all that squared away and focus on, getting back to the financial picture I had before COVID. And, we were in good retirement position then. We'll get back there and we'll do it by reducing, what we're doing, but increasing the marketing efforts and things of that nature. So that's really it.
Well, I hope this podcast contributes to that. I think getting this out there, people kind of hearing this story, what I love about this is it attracts the people you want.
Yeah. Some people hate this.
Some people hate it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
That's
and
okay.
that's how I look at content is like, it's the easy way to repel the people that don't want anything to do with you and for the people to pull in that it's just like when they come into the studio, they're either going to hate it and leave or they're going to pull in and they're going to be part of the people giving the Google reviews that are with you for, the duration that are raving about the experience. And then that most importantly are being impacted and becoming better humans because of it.
Right. And I'll tell you, I can add one more thing. I've kind of broken down the people in the Taekwondo community that have a problem with me. And they're all either Gen Z or millennials, which tend to either be entitled or not have the ability to come to me and say, what happened here? I didn't like this. Did you say that? I could always have the conversation, choose to apologize, choose to clarify, things like that.
Yep.
These people, when asked, because I say, well, why does so-and-so hate you? Ask them. Well, they don't have a reason. Exactly. They don't have a reason, right? Because they can't come and communicate something. I have a problem, I go right to, like Kevin and I have a problem, we hash it out right then and there, and we're fine the next minute, right? So there's just a certain type of person that would rather lie or avoid or, do things. And I just come to the conclusion that, that's just, I can't help that. If you can't have a conversation or articulate, because there's assertions they have that usually you can say if they said I did something, maybe the situation was misconstrued. I got nothing, like literally nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just interesting to see that there's just some people you're never going to be able to.
You can't worry about it because there's nothing you can do. I had this guy, I was a sales director for a company, and I literally, when I started with the company, they were millions of dollars in debt. They were bankrupt. This guy was outside sales guy on their team. The owner of the company really liked him, kept him around, and didn't really produce that much. I didn't have any nice guy, right? I don't have any beef with him or whatever. One day somebody comes up and was like, man, you and Mike really hate each other, huh? And I'm like, no. I'm like, do we? He's like, well, he doesn't like you. I'm like, really? Like, oh, that's cool.
What
like,
did
I don't care. Like, you'd like complain about the awards I'd give, and like I'd alienate the people that weren't performers. Like, yeah, because they suck. I'm gonna like the people that, and it's not even like I'd give the MVP, I'd give a most improved, I'd always give a rookie of the year, and it's so funny, like little paper awards that I'd hand out to people. But every year, every month, I'd give we'd do a meeting, and it was basically I love getting up and motivating people and like, shouting out and making them feel good and stuff on top of that, but also that mental toughness, like
Right.
giving a seminar essentially.
That's
for my
motivating,
team.
actually.
It's motivating. I love doing it every month. And every month we do like the monthly awards. And what I would get, the effort I would get for handing somebody a piece of paper and shouting them out at the monthly meeting, people would like not leave work. They would put this hustle in. It wasn't like I was telling them, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, and you need to put in that extra time, right? Like, here's the minimum time you need to do. Here's your work schedule.
And here's the goal.
And they were working over because they wanted to achieve the goals.
Right.
And so kind of long story, but like I saw this guy that was just doing all the right things, but he wasn't getting the results yet. Like he was doing the right things, and man, I wanted to just encourage this guy because he was getting frustrated. He was like, the results weren't coming yet, and I knew like if he just keeps doing it, if he does it just for a little bit longer,
he'll tweak it and figure it out. Yeah,
like Master Shin says, it's impossible to do the right things over and over again and not get good at it.
Exactly.
And so I created this award called the Program Award, and every leader in our company would nominate somebody, whether it was on their team or somebody they saw on another team that was doing the things that defined the program. And maybe they were getting results, maybe they weren't, but it would end up becoming my favorite award because I didn't pick it.
Right.
The managers, the leaders of the company would say this person, and they'd give the other compelling argument. And then at the end of the day, I'd pick the one out of the group. But that award, it was like people like all of a sudden got
them over the hump,
doing the right things.
Did he get them over the
hump?
Get
them over the hump.
And we do similar things with psychology. I want to make a point about what you said, that the guy that never communicated to you why he was upset with you.
Yeah.
So here's what happens. So he's talking to somebody, and so like in the case of these couple of people that I'm telling you about, so they assert things that aren't true, and then they continue to lie, right? And so then now they've lied so many times. If I was willing to sit right here at the table with and I could wake up at 3 a.m. Every hater could sit across from me. I don't need to memorize anything. Yep. I have facts and text and things, and I have proof. So anything I say, I've got proof for. So I could debunk maybe 98% of what their complaints are. Didn't happen. Yep. Or a massive miscommunication, right? But when you lie that much, and if you have witnesses, because I would just tell them, I said, let's film it. Let's sit down and have a talk. We'll film it. We'll show everybody. They don't want to be outed, right? Because they'll realize everybody they lied to is going to realize that there was nothing there. Yep. So that will never, ever be resolved at this point.
Never.
Right? And number two, the other human condition is if I'm staring that way and I look happy, something bad happens to somebody that doesn't like me over there. They're like, well, Shane thought it was funny. I would never do that. Right? Would never do that. Right?
Yeah.
But that's it. And so they're like, yeah. And then it becomes a big thing. So this just happened. I had a gal that was at nationals. She won nationals solidly. Like didn't get hit in the head once. Nothing went to 3 rounds, had a great tournament. But the very first round of the very first match, she already had an ankle that was hurt. When she was at the Pan Am camp, she could barely kick. Her ankles were swollen up, right? So she just got better, rolled it first round of the first match. And she's down, the medical's out there. And even the guy that's getting ready to fight in her division behind me is like, she can do this, she's tough. And I'm like, well, anybody can do it, she can, because she is mentally strong and she'll try. So she gets up, and she finishes competing. She dominates the tournament, Well, one of the mothers of a girl that's in that division, one of my parents said, she was laughing. And I said, all right, let's rationalize this out. Very, very few people, especially a mother with a daughter the same age, is going to ever be happy that another mother's daughter is hurt.
Yeah.
I said, so it takes a special kind of person to do that. And those people don't do it publicly, right? They go tell their buddies and they laugh to their husband or whatever, but just people aren't like that. And I said, so we're going to squash this. This didn't happen. I really believe she was not laughing at her being hurt. Because this happens to me all the time.
Yep.
Like I see what happens and only people that want to have a negative result kind of do that, right? And they mentioned, they weren't like they just did this observation and go, we're gonna kill this right now. This is not what. And if it did happen, then we'll just feel bad for her, all right? Because it's just
5,000%.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's just not likely. But if more people thought of it that way and didn't propagate things, like I could hate you.
Yeah.
If someone called up and says, yeah, I heard, Jason did this and this and this, and like I have no knowledge of that. and I wouldn't repeat that unless you have someone that actually has firsthand knowledge of it.
Yep.
Well, you don't like him. Yeah, I don't care. They don't like him. I'm still going to lie about the guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's wrong.
Yep.
That is a lot of bad things happen.
It's the whole thing. Somebody has a problem with somebody, and then they want
Yeah.
a justification that what they're right.
Well, they want to
and
make
so
it
they
a
go and
bandwagon.
they get other people. They collude.
Yeah.
There's a collusion. Like, I know Shane doesn't like Jason either, and so I'm gonna call him up and plant this seed, and then we're gonna get together and we're gonna have fun because we're gonna bond,
Yeah.
and we're gonna.
And he's hoping I'm going to go do that to somebody else.
Yep.
And I said, and I even told him, I said, and I would really be careful repeating that because I knew the guy really well.
Yeah.
I actually had a falling out with the guy. All right. It was, I had a falling out with the guy and he knew we weren't on good terms. And I was pretty frustrated with him, but I would never, ever. Well, I said, yeah, he's done a lot of bad things. That's not one of them.
Yeah.
So I would be really careful who you tell that to. And that's how I say it, to try to slow down the inevitable bullshit that's going to happen. So I just wished people were on. It just comes down to honesty, I guess. I don't know.
It's honesty, and I remember what I was going to say. It wasn't even necessarily a question, but
Right.
you were talking about. You alluded like almost to an intuitiveness of being able to predict what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this conversation with my friend Kevin the other day, and he was talking about how it's really hard for intuitive people to explain how they can predict what's going to happen. And he's like, what's really happening is you can see the way that somebody sees the world.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the way they talk, the way that they describe their situations, the way that, and you can quickly, intuitively, maybe without you even knowing what's happening, you can formalize how things are going to play out.
Right.
And that's really what intuitive people are doing. And I'm like, oh my God, I never really realized that's what I was doing until you just described it that way. But I'm like, I've interviewed so many people for positions, like sales positions, and I can just intuitively, no, don't get me wrong, I've been wrong.
Yeah, we always fail.
You can fail, you can be wrong. Some people are also really good at lying and masking and that kind of thing. However, I've had a high percentage of it turning out well, especially with people that I just had a really good feeling about, right? That this is going to turn out. They usually turned out. And I was trying, as a leader, I was trying to train my leaders on how to interview people. Mm-hmm. And the frustrating part would be I gave them you're the first interview, and then if you like them, send them over to me. And they'd send me these people. I'm like, did you not see this giant wart that this person has? Not physically, but did you not see this inconsistency? And they couldn't.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to explain how to formalize.
And that's one of my talks I have is not everybody is. You always want to say we're all equal. We're not. Some people are shorter.
Yep.
Some people have different mental abilities and capacities. We're not equal.
Yeah.
Now we can work harder in other areas to make up for those things and maybe build those things, but we're not all equal. So whether it be reading people, whether it be physical abilities, mental abilities, we're just not. Doesn't mean you can't be successful.
Yep.
But it's a different hill.
It's a different hill. And what's really cool is we're two people that came from childhoods that weren't the best, right? Or there's a lot of chaos. And so we're the rare birds, the unicorns that have a good perception on life.
Right.
That don't fall into the trap of talking bad about other people.
Right.
Those rumors, doing those things.
Well, plus we've been at the bottom. We know what it's like to be ridiculed. We know what it's like to be hated. We know what it's like to be poor. We know what it's like for people to be talking shit about you. I've been rich, I've been poor, rich better.
Yep.
But I always tell my kids, I go, it can all go away tomorrow. Don't you dare judge somebody. And my kids are very, very kind and very, very practical. But these are lessons that people just don't get.
And that's why you're here.
Yeah, right. I had one other point that you just made. Expectation. I'll poison the expectation management too. So when you can see what may happen, I think one of the biggest skill sets you can have is expectation management, right? So if you see how things might go, like I warned the one kid, I go, you're going to get to a point where you're not going to recognize the wall. You can say yeah all day long, right? Or I've told people, this is how this is going to play out. Oh, no way, I'm telling you. So you need to be prepared, and we need to get them ready to expect what's going on. So in sales, expectation management. Here's what's going to happen. If you don't do this, then we can get in a situation where it could be late.
Yep.
If you do this, this can happen. Or, I used to sell websites, and back then websites could take 6 months to a year. Right? So I'm like, you're going to be frustrated. You are absolutely going to hit points. It's like building a house back then, right?
Yep.
You are going to hate this. You got to call me. We got to go over it. We'll reassess what we talked about. And one of my big tricks were the biggest traps you get into both in building houses and web applications is they start adding things when they start seeing progress. So what I would start doing is, okay, that's plan B. Let's finish, because we had a good reputation for finishing things on time and on budget.
Yeah.
You can't do that, but we're people pleasers, right? We all want to make the customer happy. So we start adding things. Like, why is it done? So, dude, you added 30% of the scope and then change your mindset. I don't want to have that conversation. So I said, we'll put it on the list. We want to finish and get paid for what was done.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, but you can apply that to everything. And so expectation management is one of the most valuable things you can learn. But if you have the intuitive nature, that kind of helps close the loop on that.
It does, and that is a perfect way to end it. You said 2 hours, and I think we've touched that. So,
all right, awesome. Good.
Man, this is awesome, Shane. Thanks again for coming down. This
I
has been a
appreciate it,
phenomenal
sir.
conversation. My pleasure.
I had a lot of fun.